Grok Talk.
Welcome to another edition of Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com, New Hampshire's leading conservative blog site. We are your feared extremist, right-wing, hard-charging, gun-toting, opinionated, outspoken, rabble-rousing, I screwed it all up, conservatives with a big splash of libertarianism. Brought to you by the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers and GraniteGrok.com, back after a 3-week hiatus, 2-week hiatus technically, because this is week 3.
You can turn that music down.
But we are, it's not that loud.
Yes, it is.
It is in your headset, but not over here. And this
But I want to hear you, not
matters.
necessarily. I want that as a background. I want to hear your dulcet tones.
Dulcet tones.
How you doing? My name's Ann Custer. I had an ad with a Republican in it who was actually undecided.
Independent.
Yeah, that's our Whiskey
that,
Tango Foxtrot for the week, by the way.
Well, and you can also add in, have you watched the other ad where she's trying to help this small brewery? I can't tell if she's a Democrat or a Republican. And here she ran the last time as an uber progressive. Those ugly, nasty capitalists who want profits. And now she's a wash in a beer factory trying to make herself...
I'm here to help you raise money that you didn't build so that I can take it for stuff I like. My name's Ann Custer, and I approve this message. Annie Custer, sorry. She was Ann McLean Custer when she was running as the far-left progressive extremist.
Which has she dropped the McLean part?
A long time ago. She's been Annie Custer since she got elected.
Oh, okay.
Just like Hillary Rodham Clinton was Hillary Clinton until Bill got elected. Then she was Hillary Rodham Clinton again. It's
I like the HRC because it's her Royal Clintonness.
Anyway.
and the McLean Custer lends itself to a better form of abbreviation,
yes,
in McCluster.
That's what I've been calling her since before she got elected to office. So anyway, welcome to Grok Talk. There is a post at GraniteGrok.com on the Ann Custer thing. I included James Pindell's tweet with the picture. And he says, woman in Annie Custer ad claims to be a Republican, but Nashville clerk says she's undeclared. And I picked this up from Mo Lane at Red State, care of Susan Olson, who put it up on Facebook. And I added, Republicans for Ann Custer operates out of a dark, empty corner between the victim class workstation and the false outrage dispenser at the offices of out-of-state funded Granite State Progress. So that's where they are. There's nobody there. But, even Republicans are like, Ann Custer, ew.
Well, I don't know. There was a whole bunch of Republicans for Lynch.
Yeah, but he's not that bad. He really isn't that bad. There are a few positions where he's moderate. He hides in the moderate cloak, and that's how he got elected as many times as he did. And he almost always caved when the left went at him.
Yeah.
But
that was the problem.
He wasn't Gene Shaheen.
Oh, no.
And he's not Maggie Hassan.
No, and even Maggie Hassan is trying the Lynch approach. She's trying to look like the nice, moderate person to get reelected. Then she'll get back to encouraging her.
Oh, but she did that way back before. After she got kicked out of the Senate in 2010.
Yeah.
She was at the founding of the Coffee Party in New York City, selling herself as a moderate so she could run for governor.
Mm-hmm.
And that,
whatever happened to that?
And if you'll buy that, there's some other people in New York City that'll sell you a bridge.
Right.
Yeah.
Whatever
happened to that coffee party?
They're still around, and they're
Where?
still, I don't know.
Are they just down to grinds now?
They just had grinds. It's just a wet filter and some grinds. They are. They just had some news. They're actually trying to engage in the election. I forget. I just wrote about them a couple of weeks ago.
Well, so's Occupy. I just saw it here in New Hampshire. Occupy lost their lawsuit about taking over the park at night, I guess, or something absurd like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it is what it is, and they say that the Tea Party has died. Yeah.
Yeah, tell that to the Republican establishment.
Yeah, the Tea Party hasn't died. If it had died, as Steve said, why would the Republican Party establishment be declaring war on it all across the country? Another piece in American Thinker yesterday saying, basically pointing out how Karl Rove was going to lose this election. Wave?
Oh, I read that.
Wave? What wave? More like a wet drip. Yeah, I put a couple of nasty...
Bye, Republicans.
I put a couple of nasty comments on that.
Bye, establishment Republicans.
I also got the annual Dunning letter from the National Rhino Support Committee, wanting to know where my membership money was. So I wrote
Did you tell
back,
them you gave it to the Tea Party?
pretty much. I said, I got 2 words for you. Thad Cochran.
Well, and here in New Hampshire, we've got the same problem.
And I then said I
with
got
the Senate Majority PAC. That Steve, you have been doing a magnificent job.
Senate Republican Majority PAC burns in $14,000 so far on primaries for Nancy Pelosi Styles and Dave Drunken Disorderly Booten.
Yeah. Oh, by the way.
Bet you missed us, didn't you? You didn't have this for 2 weeks, and now we're back. Look at that.
Snark, snark, snark. It's a snark fest. It's a snarknado.
Snarkasm. It's snarknado, yes. That's exactly what I said to my wife the other day, and she's like, oh.
Here I am, Mo.
Yeah.
By the way, thinking of Drunken Disorderly, whoever sent in that rather excellent picture of the disabled truck, there is a copy of the pink version on the media library now.
Okay. Oh, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
I uploaded it to the media library.
That was well done.
Yes.
Making Dave Booten's truck pink. Is that Dave's pink? Dave's truck?
I didn't think.
Whose truck was that?
That's Dave's.
It was Dave's?
It is Dave's?
Was wearing his plate.
I thought it was somebody else's that owns a restaurant.
Said it 16 plate on it?
Oh, I guess not. Oh, then I was thinking of the wrong state senator.
Yeah.
Because he's got one like it.
We should mail him a screwdriver, because he's going to take that sucker off of there pretty soon.
The screwdriver, that's in a tall glass, right?
Yes. Excellent, excellent. Hi, Dave. Bet you missed us, too. So glad to be here.
Yeah, don't worry, Mr. Booten. Anytime that you need a ride home from any bar, whether it be the Asian bar or somewhere else, we'll be there to help you out.
And it's really
help you out. There you go.
And it's not personal.
Well,
honestly.
we know which way you got in, but we'd sure like to help you out.
Right. And it's really not personal. We told you if you voted for the stuff you voted for that this would happen. We told you. We warned you. People called you and emailed you, and you ignored them.
Yes, and as we said during
People
the pre-show,
known as your constituents, of which we just happen to be a loud tip of the spear representation.
Yeah, as we talked about in the pre-show, if these guys want to make us shut up, stop doing stupid stuff. You know, it has nothing to do with Obama's foreign policy. Don't do stupid stuff. This is, if you follow the platform, if you follow not only just the law of the Constitution, but the spirit of the Constitution, and you act like real Republicans, then we wouldn't be doing half the stuff that we have to do. We are going to call you out. We are going to be the counterweight, because obviously NHGOP Jennifer Horn and NHGOP Chair John Sununu or any of the others. Oh, Fergus. Do I have to go into Fergus?
Fergie?
Fergie. Fergie! Yes. I'm not going to go to some of those jokes that just appeared. They're supposed to be the protector of the brand.
No offense to Sarah Ferguson.
Yeah. Or the singer.
Or the singer.
Yeah.
Whose name I forget.
Fergie.
I know, but I forget her full name. I used to know what it was.
But, you know, why is it incumbent upon us, a band of bloggers, to stand up more for the brand of the Republican Party than the people who've been elected to do that?
Because they don't understand what the brand is. They think it's a cute little elephant with swollen spending. And sorry, guys,
Excuse me, but my elephant has swollen spending. I have to take it to the vet.
But that's exactly what the Democrats do. And you know, the bubble's going to pop whether you blow it up quickly or slowly. And we're done. We don't want the bubble to pop. We want it to deflate naturally. We want government to stop spending. We want government to stop regulating. We want it to stop militarizing. And we want to be the free people that we were created to be.
We are the ice on the swelling. No, I don't know. I'm trying to work with that.
Well, I think it was Thomas.
Take the ice bucket challenge. Let's dump it over the NHGOP and start over.
Yeah. Well, I think it was Thomas Sowell who I put up as a notable quote, a two-parter, and he said one of them, if I'm remembering right, either that or it was yet another post that I bookmarked and haven't gotten back to.
I swear I wrote that. Where is it?
Yeah, 8,500 posts later, I don't know.
Yeah, right.
He said, what do the Republicans stand for? And I've been on a tear, and we've talked about it slightly. What Republican wave? I'm not seeing it here in New Hampshire.
No, they're doing everything they can to destroy it. They're running a Senate candidate who is unpopular with all of the base and a good chunk of the middle. And they think that just because he's equally unpopular as Gene Shaheen, that's a winning combination. And they're running a gubernatorial candidate who may be a perfectly nice guy and businessman in private life, who's got foot and mouth disease on the campaign trail and is trying to take out a perfectly good, young, energetic conservative activist who was already running for the job.
What I was going to point out was, Mike,
Yeah.
move that way just a little bit.
Am I
please.
still hiding behind you on a damn camera?
Well, if I move forward to hit my keyboard. I don't
Yeah,
have...
but you're hiding behind 25 fewer pounds of him. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
Yeah,
So,
I got 20 more pounds to go. But
small
anyway.
dog.
Big bark.
Big bark.
You guys may have the email because the laptop in front of me is for the live stream. I don't do my email on it anymore since I have supplanted it with a new one. Grokster Tom sent us an email. Can one of you bring that up and read it?
I will look.
Because I had a repost to that, and I think it's, who knows, maybe we're having an effect. Okay, it's a race between these two to see which one's got my email that I can't get to.
The Walt the Fraud one?
No, from the, you have to vote.
Here it is. I win. I got another pen. You
Okay.
missed that the first
Looks
time.
like the same one.
Short message. The Republicans are now acting like Obama, who is now blaming social media, the media, and
No. You gotta read the first one. What I
Where?
was replying to. Tom's email.
BMRC members. The purpose of this email is to urge you to do the following. Vote in the Republican primary election for the candidates of your choice.
Yeah, and that committee is which one?
BMRC. Belknap?
No.
No. Let me see, it's in here. Brookline Mason GOP.
Yes.
No, okay. 2. Vote in the general election for the Republican candidate, even if they were not who you voted for in the primary election. Staying home and or not voting for a specific candidate or office is the same as voting for their opponent. In the 2012 presidential election, there were approximately 220 million registered voters in the United States. Final voting results for president, rounded, were Obama 66 million, Romney 61 million, which means 93 million people did not bother to vote. Assuming an even split, Democrat, Independent, and Republican, among the 93 million, that about 31 million Republicans stayed home. If just 20%, 6 million, of those had gone to the polls and voted for Romney, the outcome would have been different. We would have a much better individual in the White House, and our country would be a far better off than it is today.
And then
you know what? Obama does make Romney look good, but that's really not the point. The point is that it's the enthusiasm, stupid. And if you put forward candidates for which there is, or for whom there is no enthusiasm, people don't come out.
Yeah,
Skip.
And basically what I wrote after that, which I will be posting, is a whole bunch of words that basically said, Republican Party, you suck. So, and I'm saying that as a state committee man, at least for now until the primary, which I may get primary
That's
out.
the shortest answer you're going to get from Skip Murphy.
Yes.
You suck.
So, well, they've driven me
You want
to
me
use...
to read what you wrote?
They've driven me to use a four-letter word.
Yes.
Go ahead, read it.
Yes. The Republicans are now acting like Obama, who is now blaming social media, the media, and the U.S. military for his no strategy remark. With the below, the GOP is blaming voters, especially Republican voters, for what they lost. Yep, scapegoating their voters. Good job on gaining and influencing friends. You didn't give those 31 million Republicans a good enough reason to vote, and you are blaming them. It's like going to the store. Why buy an inferior product when one was looking for excellence? Humphreys sounds like the party is entitled to my vote simply because there is an R associated with my name. Once again, the GOP and NHGOP have got it absolutely backwards. I don't have to buy your product if it does not meet my needs nor my expectations of excellence. In fact, you are asking me to be contrary to myself just so that you feel good. Not happening. Fix your brand first. Hint. Let's hear the brand manager and protector, NHGOP, Jennifer Horn, lambaste her own, the rogue Republicans in the New Hampshire Senate that pushed through the Democrat agenda first. Let us know of your ire in how they spoiled the brand and that you are the person that is going to fix this. Else, you are complicit with them. So why would I want to vote for the opposition party that activates and puts their opponent's bucket list into law? And you want me and us to affirm that? Yeah, not happening.
No, it shouldn't.
It shouldn't.
When the Republican Party acts like the opposition party, I have no intentions of voting for them. And I've made it clear, and I'm getting blowback. Obviously, Tom Humphreys, who put out that email from the BMRC, is, as Grokster Tom said, somebody must be getting very nervous, and I wonder if it's the higher ups.
Oh,
And I
I'm
think
sure.
they are.
Yeah, well, I'm going to take it a step further, but first, let me say, you know, this is the doleful comment moment. These guys are the tax collectors for the welfare state. They're not doing anything to remake it. I'm not saying there should be no welfare, but it needs to be completely remade, programs slashed, agencies trashed, and let's figure out what we can actually afford to do. Who knows? We might have a better social safety net if we got rid of some of the stupid regulatory agencies and duplicative programs.
If I were only president for a day or a week.
We're going to take a break.
If Sarah Palin was president for a week, with Obama's lack of regard for Congress, which she'd never have,
We were going to take a break.
she'd shut it all down.
All right, we're going
go.
to take a break. We'll be right back.
Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer, tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire. We are struggling. Rising healthcare costs are part of the problem. Senator Jeanne Shaheen helped create this mess we're in. As a state senator, her bill chased 21 insurers out of our state. It reduced our choices, raised prices for New Hampshire families, and when Jeanne Shaheen supported Obamacare, it limited access to 10 of our 26 hospitals, reducing our choices again. Tell Jeanne Shaheen she's made healthcare worse.
Rock Talk.
All right, we're back. Hey, by the way, Aaron Day is joining us shortly, and he'll be our first guest. And then we will have on the phone Dan Dwyer, who is running for a New Hampshire Senate seat. And then after that, Maureen Mooney, who is running for the same Senate seat.
Yeah.
That should be fun.
Do you know how to operate this, by the way?
No, well, I've used it once.
Do you know how to operate this?
He's used it
I'll
once, too.
figure it out.
Okay, because I'm leaving
Ah,
in a little bit. I have to head down to where I can no longer be part of the safest podcast in New Hampshire.
I wanted to let you know also that next week we will have Ambassador Francis Rooney, Keith Ammon, who's a New Hampshire rep, and CD2 candidate Jim Lawrence. So,
right.
Yeah.
welcome back.
And they both sound like pretty good conservatives to me, and it should be a good conversation.
Well, that's why we wanted them on, because the show's called Grok Talk.
Yak, yak, yak,
Yak, yak, yak, yak, yak. So anyway, what's next?
What's next? Oh, I don't know. There's so much going on.
Well,
We've got ISIL spreading across the Middle East, starting to look at Europe. We've got Cameron, Prime Minister Cameron of Britain's, raising the flag as far as they're coming for us. They're coming for us. And President Obama's, status quo, playing golf.
No, it's more than that. I call it Cameron's new balls. I mean, the guy was considered to be pretty wimpy when he was first elected. And there he is standing up there basically declaring it to be existential evil that goes back hundreds of years. And this was not caused by 9/11. This was not caused by us invading Iraq. These guys were always evil, and it's time for us to go after them. Would it be nice if Obama stood up and said that? The problem is he's one of them.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've finally gotten to the point where he may not be Muslim himself, but boy, he is certainly showing his preference as far as religions are concerned. And make no doubt about it, ISIL is a religion, regardless of, and is an adherent to a religion, regardless of what he says from his bully pulpit.
Yeah, it's not a religion itself. It is as
It's an expression of religion.
as Cameron said, it's an evil belief system.
Well, it is a political system wrapped up in a religious belief, which is unlike what we see here in the West, where you do pull them apart, and they can be mostly separate. Although the freedom of religion folks would absolutely wish to put religion back in the dark corner of your cellar, and no religion in the public square, which I think is the wrong thing too. So here we are. We're faced with two opposite evil, both ends of this spectrum are evil.
So the problem is always that the folks that say it's all about freedom of religion really want freedom from religion, or at least from any religion that has morals. And you can't tell me that Islam has morals when their idea of proper adherence to their moral code is killing and raping and pillaging.
Well, you bring up a good point, because they want the freedom from religion. They say that that is a right. Well, the problem is these people don't want to think about what rights really mean, which is it's totally individual, that my right to free expression has nothing to do with your even paying attention to it. But they want to force their freedom upon those of us who have a religious viewpoint, which means that they, by necessity, have to stomp on our rights to have the free expression, period. And we see that all the time, that they claim that I've got the right to do this. I got the right to that. I have the right, Sandra Fluke, whatever. I have the right to contraceptives. Well, sure you do. That doesn't necessarily mean
you have the right to buy them.
Yes, you have the right to buy them. Go down to the corner grocery store or to the pharmacy. But your right should not extend to my wallet. But this is where we go.
Well, it's in the case of religion.
I'm still wondering just exactly what kind of life she leads if she can go bankrupt buying contraceptives.
Well, she also gave herself $100,000 to her campaign, and decided that was going to be. It just drives me nuts. Here she's saying, you have to pay for my contraceptives, but I can give my campaign for California State Senator $100,000. She's got a rich husband. I mean, and she's a lawyer. She's one of the top lawyers, came from one of the top law schools, period. Don't tell me we have to pay for your contraceptives.
And she wasn't, by the way, an impecunious student down there at Georgetown. She was, in fact, a postgraduate student who already was well off. And a nasty activist.
Yeah. And the person that you just saw come on to the live stream is our friend Aaron Day. Welcome to our rant. Go right ahead.
Whichever way you like. There you go.
Yep, and we can give you more cord. We got plenty of cord.
We can even turn your microphone up.
Oh, great.
If we're,
yes. You've arrived a little early.
I had a battle with my coffee, and I lost.
And you should be different from the rest of us. Why?
Yeah, good. So,
if you were listening to us, you might have spluttered your coffee. That sort of thing happens. So while we're on the random segment, I've got a few choice cartoons of the King Here's a Horton, which I shall be posting up later, as in, who heard a Horton? The King, Burger King, that is, who's buying Tim Hortons in order to expand globally, but more importantly, to put their long-term headquarters in Canada, And here's where it gets interesting.
Mm-hmm. I see where this is going.
The rich live a different life from us. The elite think they can tell us how to live their lives. Warren Buffett thinks, with his buddy Obama, that the rich need to pay more taxes, and that is everybody above middle class except him.
Yes.
Berkshire Hathaway, that's Buffett's company, is bankrolling the Burger King merger with Tim Hortons to the tune of $3 billion, or about 20% of the total. And they're very happy with the move of the headquarters to Canada because it protects their investment and their investors, and, by the way, Warren Buffett himself, from excess U.S. taxes.
Yeah, and the key part of this is that they say, well, how can an American company move to Canada? Well, guys, it's not an American company at all. It's owned by Brazilians. It just gets...
And before that, it was owned by the English, and before that, it was an American company. But it hasn't been an American company for years.
And of course, you get the predictable reaction from people like Dick Turban, who, like any other Democrat, thinks the money is theirs, and you get to keep that which they declare to be your fair share, which is never very much.
Yeah,
and so one of the cartoons said, we need to build a wall to keep Warren Buffett in.
Yeah. And I have to find the post where it says, I think everybody is saying, well, you're going to deny all those billions of dollars to the Treasury, which the underlying assumption is, which I think is absolutely wrong, is like, we are entitled to that money.
Hell no.
From government. And it really bothers me, because it does say that government, instead of God, has first claim on your money. As an evangelical Christian, first 10%, that is the tithe. Okay? But God only wants 10%. Government wants a heck of a lot more than that.
They do.
But
I think the Liz Warrens and the Jean Shaheens and the Ann Custers, who are all millionaires, they should step up and right off the bat say everything I own over $1 million the government can have. That would set a fine example. Nobody else should follow them, by the way, but they should just do that.
You notice that Warren Buffett, much as he advocates higher taxes for the almost rich, absolutely refuses to pay any extra himself, uses the tax laws as they are written to his maximum advantage, and will not write a one-off check or any other kind of check to the Treasury for what he thinks he owes them.
No. He says, I'm going to give all my money away, da-da-da-da.
Right, but he wants to choose where he gives it away.
Yeah,
he's
right,
not giving it to, he's not giving it to the U.S. government.
He's the third richest person on the planet. I just read that yesterday.
After whom?
I don't know.
Because I think he's richer than Bill Gates at the moment.
Well, I said on the planet, not the country. So
no, and of course there's Carlos Slim Helú in Mexico, who's pretty damn rich off of cell phones and telecommunications. And Li Ka-shing, yes, that's right, Ka-ching, in Hong Kong, who's also extremely rich. Those are the ones that come off the top of my head as being near the top of the Forbes list.
I don't really know. I know I read that he was number 3. And I'm like, because we were having this conversation at home. Somebody was asking me who the richest people in the country were. And I'm thinking, well, obviously him. And then, of course, Bill Gates. And, there's a couple other folks, but I was just like, most of these people are like, they're not worried about money. They're not wondering how they're going to pay for the groceries. They don't even buy their own groceries.
And that's the thing that most rich liberals don't get, and even a lot of rich Republicans. I know what the price of a gallon of milk is, okay? And I also know it's much harder for a lot of other people than what it is for me. I live a comfortable lifestyle for the most part. I don't have to worry about the price of a gallon of milk, but I do know people who, they have to shop very carefully to make ends meet. And it's not right when I see these liberals over and over and over again. Neil Cavuto had a column that's just great about liberals rolling over us. And, it is unfair, it is unjust for the liberals to keep piling on cost after cost after cost upon ordinary individuals just because they think it's the right thing for government to do.
The cost of gas has gone back up a little bit in New Hampshire, and I haven't seen any articles about that.
Imagine that.
Yeah. Every time it went down 2 cents, everybody's like, the price of gas went down again. Yep. That's how it works.
Yep.
So we'll talk about that.
Unless it's a Republican in the White House, and then it's how much it went up.
Right. But you saw my graph with the picture of the gas prices and the babies crying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not me, because I'll be leaving.
You'll be leaving. Well, no, that was... All right. You're leaving now.
Yes.
All right. But we have Aaron.
Yes.
We're all set. We'll be right back.
Mike gets to come back.
Rock Talk. Stay tuned.
I got to sit in Skip's chair because I got to operate the phone lines. This should be fun.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Jeb Bradley has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now, Senator Bradley is leading the charge to try and pass a Senate bill to prevent us from criticizing his vote. Call Senator Bradley at 603-569-4208 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW, New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
This is a coalition of New Hampshire taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is a repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning. You're listening to Grok Talk.
Welcome back to segment 2, Grok Talk, brought to you by GraniteGrok.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers, coming to you live or pre-recorded, depending on when you're listening, from the CNHT studios in lovely but somewhat chilly Concord, New Hampshire. We're going to move right into our next segment. Our next guest is Aaron Day, who is the chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire and is in charge of a PAC called Stark 360. Aaron, welcome to the program.
Good morning.
How you doing?
Not too bad.
Good to see you. It's been a while since we've had you on.
Absolutely. It's a bit warmer.
Inside.
Yeah.
And, it was cold like winter like last time. But It's always warm in here.
Yeah. True.
So what brings you to our illustrious studios today?
Well, we're just gearing up for this election and looking forward to winning some of these extremely important primaries.
Okay, and which ones in particular would you like to talk about?
Well, I think the gubernatorial primary is one of particular interest. We're supporting Andrew Hemingway, and that's I think that race really defines a lot of what's going on in the state between the establishment Republicans and then the kind of liberty conservative wing. We've been doing polling, and with 66% undecided, the race is neck and neck between Walt and between Hemingway. And so I think this is a winnable election. Anytime somebody gets to see Walt and actually see Hemingway, it's a non-decision. I mean, they end up flocking towards Andrew. So it's just a matter of getting the message out.
He's Andrew is conservative. He's forthright. He's poised. It's not talking points for Andrew. I never see any notes. It's all from the heart. And he doesn't misfire. At the Exeter debate last week, I noted that Walt had come a long way since his earliest foot and mouth experiences, but still that he flubbed a few questions and Andrew didn't flub any.
Yep.
And, I just think it's a travesty that the party has gone to the trouble of recruiting a guy who'd spent and may even have settled outside the state to come back here and run against somebody who was already in the race, already had a following, and already was doing a decent job, and is frankly doing a better and better job as time goes by.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's the party, and I think in particular it was John Sununu who actually recruited Walt. And if you look at what happened, I mean, the RGA, the first poll that they did was a poll between Walt and Maggie Hassan. They didn't even include Hemingway, and he'd been in the race for 6 months. They still don't poll on him. And in fact, Sununu used to be the chair of the RGA. They then went and did a poll on the Senate race. Why is the Republican Governors Association polling on the United States Senate race? And of course, in that poll, they only polled Scott Brown and Gene Shaheen. So
that's actually an aggravating trend because it's not just the liberal media and the insiders that are doing it. Even when you go to conservative sites, when they talk about that Senate race, they talk about Brown and Shaheen. They don't mention anybody else. So I'm wondering.
They even managed to get Fox News in bed. You know that Brett Baer came here?
Did he?
And that Mama loves Brett Baer's reporting, and she hates him now because he came to New Hampshire and he reported on the Senate race, Scott Brown only.
Oh, well, that was infuriating, that special report on Obamacare in New Hampshire. They were supposed to cover us on this, and it was about the whole grassroots effort. And they go through the whole thing, and they talk about how awful Obamacare has been for the state of New Hampshire, and they show these stories of patients now that can't go to the hospital that's nearby, can't get medical treatment, costs. And at the end, they try to position it as, and Scott Brown is the savior after doing, what he did in Massachusetts. Now he's coming here, and these are the political consequences. And that has nothing to do with what's actually going on.
The guy who claimed that the seat in Massachusetts didn't belong to anybody in particular is acting like the seat in New Hampshire should be his seat, which I think is offensive right on his face. But this is the guy who brought us Dodd-Frank, which has spawned a number of new evils, including an agency, the CFPB, which is trying to regulate banks and businesses everywhere, claims the right to be able to shut you down, cease and desist at any time for any reason with no hearing beforehand. and it now turns out to be not just a fiefdom, but a thiefdom full of racial discrimination, sex discrimination, sexual harassment, underpay for people who aren't in favor. It's incredible. There are reports on it all over the media this week. And this is the kind of spawn you get from evil liberal programs, and Scott Brown was proud to vote for it.
I think that the grassroots in New Hampshire can get their just desserts by electing somebody else, voting for somebody else in the primary other than Scott Brown. I would love to see him come in third, but if he doesn't win, the entire media culture that's been reporting this race will be like, now what do we talk about? Because we didn't mention these other two people, and if one of them wins, it'd be like, what happened to Scott Brown? Oh, well, there were these other candidates that we didn't talk about for 6 months straight, and I guess we'll talk about a different state now, because what are you going to do?
I mean, Bob Smith is getting great coverage, and he had that huge concert event yesterday. Jim Rubens is favored by the union leader, or was until...
And the RLCNH.
And of course the RLCNH, and was voted Citizen of the Year by union leader last year because of his civic duty.
Gambling, yeah. For those of you who aren't familiar, he's been fighting gambling in the state forever, and he was amazing at that. So.
Yeah. His big accomplishments are that he fought for school choice and charter schools. He fought for electricity deregulation. He fought against gambling expansion, and these are things that most conservatives in New Hampshire are all on board with. He has a couple other positions that I worry about a little bit, but I still like the guy. Bob Smith is an absolutely rock-solid conservative. My only question is, does he have a deep enough base? But this is what we will find out on November 9th. In the meantime, what happens if Brown loses? I consider it to be part of my duty as a conservative to make sure he loses. Aaron, over to you.
Well, I mean, I think that he needs to win and win big. I mean, he's not raising the kind of money that he was raising in Massachusetts either. The fundraising pace has been low. So if you notice and you see any of his messages right now, it's all about unity. Every time he goes anywhere, or at least a meeting I'm at, his presentation, he's not asking for my vote in the primary. He's just saying, will you support me when I inevitably win? And so he's moving on this unity message. And I think the reality is, I think he's going to have a rude awakening if he does win, because I know I've talked to a lot of people in the Liberty community that will vote. They'll vote for the important local elections. They'll vote for delegate. They'll vote for the other races. But a lot of people are not going to, nobody's going to vote for Shaheen, but a lot of people are not going to, would not cast a Brown ballot in a general election.
No,
I want to get back to Hemingway real quick.
The worst of it is apocalypse here. Apocalypse for conservatives is if Havenstein and Brown both win, there's no reason to come out and vote for a lot of people. And not that Havenstein would be a terrible governor, but he's viewed as an imposition by a lot of people, and that's a problem. So back to Hemingway.
I derailed my train of thought. I wanted to say, I know Hemingway gets out a lot. He hasn't had a lot of yard signs. I know he has yard signs now because you were just talking about him the other day. And I know that a lot of people who show up at primaries and regularly that aren't grassroots activists technically, or aren't your traditional primary interested voter, are more inclined to vote based on what they see, not what they know. So how's the sign thing going? Are we going to get the kind of penetration we want for those people? I mean, and I know Andrew's got a week and 2 days left or whatever to really get out and meet people. But once again, the people that go to those meetings aren't necessarily that particular voter that I'm talking about.
Yeah, well, so this is why we started Start 360. And we started Start 360. This is going to be a long-term endeavor. This isn't just for this election. This is about having a funding vehicle for Liberty broadly. And in fact, I plan on using Start 360 in the local elections in 2015, because we all know that's stacked against us, and it's the left and the unions that do a great job of getting out the vote there. So we've put a lot of things in place. We have 2 offices in Manchester, 1 in Bedford. We have a huge grassroots team that's out delivering signs. We have a phone banking operation. We're doing statewide polling. We're identifying voters. We've actually created a website, Hemingway 4NH, the number 4. And you can go to that website and you can actually sign up, and it'll look at your Facebook friends, match your Facebook friends against the voter list, and then you can determine by contacting them whether your friends are Hemingway supporters or not, which is really helpful because we can use that information, engage those people, have them put up signs, have them help talk about Andrew to their friends. And so we have a huge grassroots effort for the last 10 days here for the election to make sure that we get his name out. And then we're doing some other things online and with some mobile canvassing technology so that when people are going door to door, they know already whether somebody is for Andrew, undecided, or for Walt. And so this is going to be a great way for us to be efficient about getting the right message out there.
It's good to see us doing that because I know that's what the Obama people have been doing, OFA, and before them, Acorn. And so this is not, I mean, we've been talking, I know Andrew was talking about the software last year, trying to have canvassing software, being able to pinpoint, so many dozens or hundreds of bulk data points to really know exactly how best to use your resources. So that's good to hear. Oh God, I just lost my train of thought. Mike, help me. Ask a question. I just completely derailed my train of thought again.
Well, and so you said voter software. So Andrew had actually started work on voter analysis and door-to-door software. Are you leveraging that effort, or have you in fact got your own effort in that area?
Well, we've got our own effort. I mean, I have been talking to Andrew. Andrew's the one who introduced me to the RLCNH, but I don't talk to Andrew now. We can't coordinate. But we've been building an infrastructure for the last year. We call it Start 360 now, but I mean, we have everything from a digital printing press to all of these software tools that we've been using and testing and building for over a year. So it's our own, but we've shared knowledge previously with Andrew prior to the election.
Are there other races you're into that besides the ones we've talked about?
There are. I mean, from my perspective, the Medicaid expansion bill, Obamacare Medicaid expansion, to me was unacceptable. And I couldn't even believe that Republicans in the Senate would push through and drive a piece of legislation like that. I mean, we have these debates all of the time, and certainly within the Republican Party, there are differences of opinion, but that is one area, the largest expansion in government, that there shouldn't be any agreement. I mean, that's a litmus test. If you voted for that, you're kind of off the island. And so we threatened to primary any Republican that voted for that piece of legislation. There are either primaries or people have retired in all but two of those races. So Chuck Morris and Jeb are still moving on. And if you look at what's left, we're really focused on Jane Cormier and Senate District 16. We think that she's a fantastic candidate and are putting a lot of resources behind that. And then Steve Kenda in Senate District 24, who's running against Nancy Stiles. And if you look at Booten and Stiles, I mean, they both voted for Obamacare Medicaid expansion, but I mean, it's even worse than that. They voted for the gas tax. They've been in favor of Common Core. And in the case of Dave Booten, he's against right to work, which, I mean, at some point.
That's another one of those issues that you have to.
Yeah, I mean, on what basis would you call yourself a Republican if you're not for school choice, not for worker choice, not for healthcare choice, and for increasing taxes? I mean, I don't know how that works.
Sounds like
these are all the things that the Republican Party is said to be against. They have clear declarations that they are for less government, less regulation, lower taxes, and more individual freedom, more choice, more school choice. It's all in there. But when you put any of them on the spot, they won't actually follow through with it, or at least the old style party hacks won't, just like Scott Brown won't. We had another wonderful illustration of that in the Exeter debate, effectively, where he was asked pretty much the same questions I asked him at my house months ago. You're all for school choice and charter schools and freedom, and you're against big government and big regulation. So therefore, sir, would you shut down the Department of Education? And the answer was no. And they asked would any of the candidates shut down the Department of Education, and he said no on stage. I mean, it's open and shut case. These folks do not work to shrink government. They are not our friends.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%. Taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And The Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Boutin's vote? Call Senator Boutin at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Hi, this is Rich Gerard, host of Gerard at Large in the Morning, the Manchester area's only locally owned, locally operated, focused, and interested, riveting radio show, heard live every Monday through Friday from 6 to 9 on 90.7 FM WLMW New Hampshire Family Radio, and available 24/7 live or archived at gerardatlarge.com. Be sure to tune in.
Welcome back to Grok Talk as I figure out which microphones I need to turn on. There we go. All right, we're here with Aaron Day from Stark 360, chairman of the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire, talking about local elections. Do you think the establishment's going to have enough staffers in the state to how they like to? Everybody can just come here and vote now. So the Republicans can bring staffers here to vote too, just like the Democrats do. I always wonder if they're going to try to do that.
No, I don't think they care enough, except for protecting their incumbents.
Well, that's what I mean. Wouldn't they want to bring in some voters for their incumbents?
Well, if only
they bring in a lot.
I mean, if only they could turn out the vote. I mean, my understanding is the 2 weeks leading up to the 2012 election, the internet wasn't working in the NHGOP's office, and so I mean, if only they could be that organized.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's just it, and I make fun because, and exactly for that point, they talk about us being able to mobilize the grassroots, and us like Granite Grok and RLCNH to be able to get a message out to people. We put up a post about a candidate that they like and support their primary candidate, and they get all upset because we're more effective than they are. It just drives them crazy. And I'm like, they can't beat the Democrats. How are they going to beat us? That'd be embarrassing.
Yep. It would be. And, what happens if their establishment candidates win? Do we go all Murkowski on them and do a write-in for the next best, our best candidate?
That is a good question. What do you think?
I haven't even thought about it. We've been so focused on making sure that doesn't happen. But
that's the right answer. Let's Richard Viguerie has been bastardizing Carville's phrase. It's the primaries, stupid. Yeah, we got to win the primaries.
Oh, we do, and the signs, the messaging, the software, getting out and doing and getting on the ground and meeting people. That's not something I do because I don't have that kind of time. But the blogging, trying to share information. Somebody sends me a tip or gives me something that I can go research. I try to do that so I can post a blog about it, which does get out, and the establishment does see it, and they do respond to it. And, it's like Alinsky says, you want them to think you know more than you are sharing, and you want them to respond. You want them to react. That's your goal. And it doesn't matter how many listeners you have or how many readers you have. It's all about perception. And we have a lot of listeners. And we have lots of readers. But I think our perception is that we have a lot more influence, and I think it's true because I've been looking at the numbers, I've been looking at the shares, I've been looking at the things, and people, it's getting close to an election, so we do a lot better.
Yeah, and of course the plea from the mainstream media, hey, we're out of state. Is Granite Grok covering that debate last weekend? That was just hilarious. We know they get some of their news from us, but that was an absolute outright admission. Hey, is Granite Grok streaming it? We're out of state.
We're at the events that they're not at. It just keeps happening over and over again.
Well, you're really one of the only news sources left. I mean, I go to Granite Grok several times a day just to see what's going on. I mean, if you look at what's going on with the Union Leader, if you look at what's going on with the Nashua Telegraph, I mean, the amount of content and the depth of content that is at Granite Grok dwarfs all of the others combined, which is fascinating to see. So I expect you guys are going to see a lot more traffic.
I hope so, and please send us your news and your tips and your leads and your thoughts and even your editorials. We've been known to post. People have emailed me their letters to the editor, and we've posted them.
Yeah, send us your tips, like friend Scott McGrath, who told us that it was freezing in northern Maine a couple of nights ago, 6 weeks earlier than usual. Yeah, global warming.
It's cold. That's where we are right now. So anyway. All right, so 2 Senate races at least. Hemingway,
the governor's race, the senatorial race. How about the congressional races? Do you have a favorite in either of those?
We like Mary Linda Garcia in that race, and then the other one we're going to stay out of.
That's a safe plan right there.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's no really good answer in CD1. Frank's just Frank, meaning he sounds conservative now, but we know he won't be. Dan Innes sounds like a really conservative businessman, but his prior voting and donating record says that he might be otherwise. And Brandon Kelly, I'm not sure if he's got a big enough base, but he's a good firebrand.
He is. Unfortunately, he came out and said he was the Republican Liberty Caucus candidate without even having talked to us, which created a little bit of a internal problem.
A stir.
Yeah.
Hey, we didn't endorse you. Stop doing that. So we talked about candidates.
There's executive council. So those are the main.
Right,
those are the main
Yep.
races.
And executive council.
We always
yes.
forget about the executive council, but it's so important around here.
Well, we should, and one of the troubling things is that our state has a corruption risk index we're a rating of a D, and we've had 10 years of Democrats, and so the executive council provides a vital role in looking at expenditures over $10,000 and being involved in judicial appointments, and so we really need to take control of the 5-person executive council. So we've endorsed Joe Kenny, Bob Burns, and Dave Wheeler. We think that those 3 all represent strong conservative fiscal approach and will be far superior to the current situation.
Yeah, and Dave would be mine.
Yeah,
Deb Pignatelli is retired, finally.
which I think is great. Deb Pignatelli used to live on the same complex as I did, and she was well regarded as a person. But hell,
I'm sure she's a great person. But like I tell everybody,
she's a Democrat lawyer. How much worse can it get?
This is a physical relationship. We're talking about your votes and my money, and my rights and my the regulatory burden you place upon me. I don't care who you are as a person. It's all about votes. Votes.
Yes,
that's all that matters.
Exactly.
So the executive council is extremely important, and most people in the state don't even know what the hell they do.
And right around 4th of July, they approved increasing the amount that we're spending on public relations promoting Obamacare Medicaid expansion. I mean, above and beyond the ridiculous level that it's already at. And so I think Joe Kenny was the only one not to vote in favor of that. And so we need more people like Joe Kenny at the executive council.
And where there's a danger that the conservative might win, the Democrats seem to be putting up stalking horses. Steve Hattemer seems to be an extremely nice guy, but he's nowhere near a conservative, and he came from out of nowhere to split the vote in the executive council race in our area with Dave Wheeler as a nominal Republican.
Yep.
Nominal is the word. We did post about that, and Tom did all the heavy lifting for that post, but I did repost it recently because it's coming up, and stuff gets lost in history, and you got to bring it back. But go check it out. You can just search Steve Hattemer, Hattamer, GraniteRock.com to find that.
He's got a bunch of friends at the eye doctors where we go, and so I placed the invite for him to come on Grok Talk. He's scared of us. I placed the invite for him to come around to our house and meet the Hollis Republicans, who aren't exactly the most conservative on the planet, and he didn't show up for that either. So he's afraid of mingling with actual conservatives.
Aaron, other issues?
No, I mean those are obviously the big issues. But it's fascinating to see as we go through this how attacked. I mean, I've been attacked. I mean, I'm not even running for anything, and I've got somebody doing a mail. Well, I'm running for delegate, and so I actually have somebody doing a mailer in Bedford against me for delegate. So I'm going to take my orange signs that I had for my school board race, and we're actually putting up sign. Who does that for delegate? But it's that nasty. In Bedford, and then we have some hack that worked for John E. Sununu for 10 years, who seems to be likes to write these editorials in the Union Leader about absolutely nothing.
Oh, that guy, yeah, I wrote about him this past week too. I forget his name.
Brown.
Yeah.
Sheridan Brown.
Something like that.
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
So this is what we get to deal with the establishment. I keep on telling people I've never actually had any issues with Democrats yet. Now I'm sure that'll change after the primary, but I mean I've had a lot of this kind of activity from the establishment.
I have too. Personally, they tried to get me fired from my job. The Democrats just write press releases. The Republicans get dirty.
Yeah.
So the establishment is unhappy with our assault on their stranglehold on power.
And I'm sure that's part of the reason why they're anti-Andrew Hemingway, is because he challenged their stranglehold on power for the chairmanship and got pretty close.
Well, and that's just it. He does not afford them the kind of access that they would like to have to the governor's office.
No.
He will be he'll be Andrew Hemingway, governor of New Hampshire, and they're just not on his list of people. They don't want him in there. They're more interested in the access than they are in a candidate who will actually do something useful.
Yep.
So,
well, and we know we have to deal with. I mean, this is a flyer, an illegal flyer, mailer from the school board race, and the Free Staters have colonized in Bedford. I mean, this thing is just littered with factual inaccuracies, and I've never experienced just blatant lies before, and it really comes from Republicans. It's not an intellectual debate. Nobody wants to discuss the ideas. It's just outright lies that we can expect
Bill
to see.
Grenier funded.
Well, yeah. So thinking of outright lies, what's your analysis of the Gary Lambert ads against Marilinda? My impression is that they're taking the tiniest grain of truth and blowing it out of proportion, or is it in fact completely fabricated?
Well, I mean, at best, it's taking a tiny grain and blowing it way out of proportion. And I think they're looking at this and saying, well, look, I can look like the tough guy, try to make Marilinda look weak. And this is pretty much what he has left as his strategy for the election. And so that's what...
I don't think it'll work. I think it'll backfire. He may end up below Jim Lawrence if he does stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, I did speculate. Remember when the flyer came out, the mailer came out, that was doing the exact same thing, basically saying, here's this tiny little thing, and we're going to cite some data nobody can find and steal video from someplace that we don't attribute, and then hope everybody just goes for it. And it didn't appear to work. The only polling I've seen is internal polling, so nobody's really doing any external polling on that particular primary that I'm aware of, but...
Well, we're doing poll. I mean, we're going to have some information. I don't know how much of it we're going to share next week, but we're doing statewide polling, and we're polling on the presidential race already as well. Because one exciting bit of news is that we've moved the Republican Liberty Caucus National Convention, which was supposed to be in May next year, to Manchester, October the 23rd through the 25th.
Awesome.
And Rand Paul has agreed to speak already. So we're hoping this is going to be a great event.
And this is 2015?
Yes.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So right in the heart of the presidential primary season, we think we're going to be able to get the Liberty all the Liberty Republican candidates there, and it's going to be a great opportunity for us to showcase. We'd love to have you guys there if you'd like to be.
We would love to cover it.
Excellent. Okay.
Contact information?
You can go to stark360.org, or you can go to RLCNH.org for the Republican Liberty Caucus of New Hampshire.
Aaron, thank you so much for coming to Concord.
And thank you for what you do. We're in awe.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. All right, that is the end of segment 2. Coming up next is Dan-Dwyer on the phone. He is a candidate for the New Hampshire State Senate in District, I forget, I think it's 11 now. It used to be something else, but we'll get to that. Anyway, my name is Steve McDonald. I'm here with Mike Rogers. Aaron Day is leaving. Dan Dwyer is up next. This is Grok Talk. We'll be right back with more news, more conversation, and more Grok Talk.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpac.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Dave Booten has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in. But all along, voting like a liberal Democrat. He voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Booten's vote? Call Senator Booten at 603-203-5391 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Few things are as important as finding the right doctor. And under Obamacare, that's harder than ever. Over a third of our hospitals no longer available. Our doctors no longer covered. Fewer choices, longer drives. No state has been harder hit than us. And even after watching it impact New Hampshire, Congresswoman Ann Custer still supports it. Call Ann Custer. Tell her Obamacare isn't working for New Hampshire.
Rock Talk. Rock Talk.
Welcome back to Rock Talk, brought to you by GraniteRock.com and the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. Mike is trying to get Dan on the phone. Dropping the number. Sometimes calling guests doesn't always work out the way we hope. Well, I'd like to thank Aaron for being on the show and sharing all that information with us. It's good to see lots of groups outside working to get better candidates. So, while we wait for that, let's see if we can come up with something else. We did want to touch on a couple other issues today that I know I made notes for, but I just handed all my notes to Mike with the phone number. Oh, I forgot to mention this. I did mention it in the pre-show. If you are a musician or a part of a band, or you know somebody who is in one, we are looking for custom music by you guys that we can use on the program. We would play your music, assuming we like it and it suits our purposes, and we would use it as background music, or we use it as intro music, or we would use it as lead-in music, or some kind of bumper music, and then we would give you credit, and you and your band or whoever, and let you know that that's where it came from. So we would be happy to. Let me put that on like that. You're back. Hang on. We would be more than happy. Watch the flash. More than happy to play your music on our program and give you credit for it, or your band, every time we play it. And so we'd like to have some more local music. It doesn't have to be local. You could be anywhere in the nation if you listen to the program, anywhere in the world, as long as it's yours. And you give us the rights to play it, we will give you credit for that music. Now.
And a link to your website.
And if you have one, absolutely, in the posted version. So we don't have Dan. He left a message, gave him the number. Hopefully he calls us in. There's certainly plenty of other stuff we could be talking about. It's been, this is 3 weeks technically since we were last on the air, so there hasn't been any Grok Talk to speak of, but lots of things have been going on in the interim.
Indeed. We had 1 week down at the home on the range with Andrew Hemingway. Skip and I were down at the Londonderry Fish and Game Club, and last week we did Grok Talk sort of late in the day with live on location at the Exeter debates. But this is in studio where we can bat around some ideas, bat around some Rhino Republicans, and generally have a good time. I'm
going to email Dan, and hopefully he sees it.
Absolutely. Yeah, so it's been an astounding week, and as we mentioned early in the show, David Cameron is showing a renewed sense of purpose and fortitude in facing down the evil which is creeping across Europe, frankly. What the readers may not know, although it was covered by Stacey McCain at theothermccain.com and by Pete Detect Guy at detectguyblog.com, which is that the UK already has nasty infestations of Sharia law and Islamic behavior, such as gangs and trapping and grooming young girls, including white girls, for Muslim male pleasure is the only way to describe it. They had a case of it in my home county of Derbyshire a year or so ago, but there's been a particularly nasty scandal in Rotherham, which is a town in Yorkshire, where there's a particularly large, what the British call Asian presence, and we don't mean Japanese, we mean anywhere east of the Middle East. And these are mostly Islamic types, unfortunately. And what has been happening, as I say, is young girls have been getting abused, and the towns are practically run by Sharia law, and it got to the point where the police forces and the social services knew there was abuse going on, but they were too scared to get out of the politically correct cocoon and actually call evil evil. And there's been big newspaper stories and a lot of embarrassment over there. So with that going on at home and ISIL going gangbusters, literally beheading people in Syria and Iraq, and especially persecuting Christians, I think David Cameron has little choice but to stand up and be counted, and I respect him for doing so, if a little bit late to the party.
This is a side effect of this whole diversity mentality.
It absolutely is. Diversity and open borders. You know, they called Enoch Powell, that was a politician back in the 60s, an extremist, a racist, a radical, for saying, you know, there were too many coming in too fast and we should send them back home. It was the sending them back home that got him labeled a racist. It has proven to be prophetic. Britain's a multiracial society. There are many Indians contributing happily. There are many Africans. There are many Jamaicans contributing happily. Some of them a little laid back and maybe into the drug culture, but who the heck cares? They're all contributing happily. And then there are those that come over and insist on practicing their own religion, running the towns according to their own laws, petitioning for Sharia law to be considered to be acceptable in the courts, and before you know it, you've got little fiefdoms popping up here and there where it's no longer safe to be British or even white.
Well, yeah, and then a lot of these folks are living off the welfare state. I mean, they're getting housing, they're getting food, they're getting everything while they're building this enclave, this cultural ghetto, where there is no inclusiveness and there is no diversity. So, you've got this diversity culture idea, which has been embraced to excuse bringing in people who completely oppose the diversity culture altogether.
Well, that's true to a point. The interesting thing about Britain is that the idle class, the folks who are, if you like, on the Bulldogs plantation as opposed to Uncle Sam's plantation, are in fact mostly white. As I commented on Stacey's blog, I lived in such a housing estate for a short while. I came out of the Royal Air Force until I had got a sound footing. A friend of the family found us a housing on the edge of what's called a council estate, that is government-owned housing, or what looked like Section 8 to us folks. I was on the edge of it. Thank God for that. It was full of drunken and lazy people who engaged in petty crime to top up their welfare.
Yeah, Anthony Daniels, who
didn't stay there long.
We talk about him a lot, writes as Theodore Dalrymple. Definitely talks about the underclass and that whole culture a great deal, and it is a byproduct of a combination of progressive priorities, and so is the whole diversity issue, and it all ties together. I mean, that's where we're headed. We're just letting people pour into the country, not because we want to help them, but because it seems like it suits the agenda of the people doing it to dilute the culture to a point where they are ensured a grip on power.
Right, and a grip on power on what? A grip on a declining power, frankly and unfortunately, because when you sap the vitality of a nation, when you basically pump its lifeblood into keeping afloat a set of leeches, eventually there's no vitality left. And that's not to say that all these folks are good for nothings. Given the right incentives, a lot of these will rise up. Just as with the Gingrich-Clinton welfare reforms in the mid-90s, the welfare rolls shrank, employment increased, government revenues increased too. It was an amazing combination, and it actually goes to show that in most cases, when the Constitution is respected, if government is split, that is to say the presidency and Congress don't belong to the same party, by and large, spending grows less or may shrink than when it all belongs to one party. The Democrats have proven that they can spend like drunken sailors, and the Republicans, when they have total control, have proven that with a combination of earmarks and cronyism, they too can spend like drunken sailors. And let us just remind people that, hey, in the case of the sailors, at least it was their own money, as Mr. Reagan said.
That's true. And, and the interesting thing about the reform that you mentioned is that you can train people, you clearly can train people to do nothing. The government's ability to affect the culture in this regard is that it can create enough entitlement to train people to do nothing. But that if you roll them back and you explain to them you're going to roll them back and you tell them what you're expecting in exchange for a declining amount of income from the state, you can retrain them to go to work.
Well, and not only that, we have all of these programs, all of which have very sudden cutoff points, such that it simply isn't worthwhile taking a job because you may end up worse off, or at least your first, $20,000 a year basically gets you nothing. You may as well do nothing. And so if we're going to have some kind of welfare, let it be a declining supplement based on your income, or maybe even, shock horror, not have payroll taxes on your lowest tiers of income so that you really get all of the money. Just imagine if it was a simple flat tax with a major deduction for the first few tens of thousands that you earn, depending on how many members of your family. You then would have a real incentive to go out to work, and employers would have a real incentive to hire you, especially if payroll taxes were abolished in favor of flat taxation. But that's, that would be a structural reform that nobody has the fortitude for. Democrats seem to like complexity because they can dole out favors and cut loopholes, and Republicans seem to like the favor factory too. It's been working for them. And this is why we have to get rid of all of those that like power and like the favor dispensary, as opposed to faithfulness to the Constitution. As always, remember that governments are instituted amongst men to protect these rights. And when it fails to do so, it's our job to alter or abolish it.
It's interesting that New Hampshire has a historically low unemployment. It's almost always lower than the national, and it's 4-point-something% now. And one of the reasons we have low unemployment in New Hampshire is because you don't get paid very much if you go on unemployment in New Hampshire. You can't live off it.
It's not. It's difficult to get.
It's difficult to get. It's difficult to keep, and you cannot sustain a lifestyle on it, which is the incentive to go find some kind of work. Now, that works. We have low unemployment because you can't live off it.
Yeah.
You just can't. And Democrats are like, oh, our unemployment's 4.4%, and we have a Democrat governor, or whatever it is. I'm sorry, I'm just pulling that number out of my head. It might be wrong. We have a Democrat governor, and we have a Democrat House, but you also have a system where you can't live off unemployment. And yet you are talking about entitlements and helping these people and giving more money to these people, when the reason the unemployment is low is because people can't live off it. And if they can't live off it, they're going to go get a job, or they're going to move.
Right. I mean, I'm all for a basic per capita payment, or especially a per capita healthcare payment that says, here's some money to go get something basic. You figure out what to spend it on, except you can only spend it on healthcare. Things like that, instead of vast, complicated programs that trap people in. And that's really the shame of the system. I mean, folks like Star Parker, who herself was long ago a black welfare queen, stand up and speak out and say, this is Uncle Sam's plantation. You do not want to be stuck here. The so-called leaders like the Justice Brothers are not doing you any favors. Get the heck out while you can.
Well, there's no advancement program unless you convince somebody else to rob somebody else of more money.
Well, exactly.
Sorry, I had to clear my throat. We're going to take a break because I can't talk for some reason, and I lost my voice. We'll be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
Congress needs to end wasteful government spending, like the $787 billion of taxpayer money thrown away in the 2009 stimulus package. It may not have done you any good, but U.S. Senator Jean Shaheen's business interest made out to the tune of $78,000. No wonder she doesn't want to talk about it whenever the subject pops up. Call Senator Shaheen and tell her you're tired of wasteful government spending.
We'd like to thank you for tuning in. Don't forget, you can listen to this or past programs on iTunes, Spreaker, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, YouTube, Ustream, and of course, at granacroc.com.
Rock Talk.
Welcome back. Sorry about that dead air. I was listening to Mike and not paying attention to what I was doing. All right, enough of that. Dan-Dwyer is on the phone with us. Dan is running for the New Hampshire State Senate in what district?
District 11.
11. I know this. See,
Merrimack, Milford, Amherst, and Wilton.
Well, welcome to the program, sir. Glad we finally got a hold of you.
Thank you.
All right, so you are in a 4-person primary? Is that 3?
I am.
You are. Okay, so let's talk about Dan-Dwyer and what he... Now, you ran against Peter Bragdon last time.
Yes, 2 years ago when the state, as many of you know, got redistricted. Peter Bragdon's old district consisted of 11 towns that included Bedford and not Merrimack. And Bedford, and it snaked all the way down 111 to, even towns like Fitzwilliam. So the district was redrawn to 4 towns. Merrimack was added, Bedford was taken off, and it became a very tight, geographically very nice district in the sense of campaigning and getting people to know us in this area with Milford, Amherst, Merrimack, and Wilton.
And shouldn't districts be tight and well contained anyway? I always think it's a travesty when districts are drawn in with odd boundaries to try and get, some predetermined result, maybe a majority of Democrats or a majority of Republicans in the district. So was it a general improvement in districting, or was yours just a lucky accident?
I would have to call Senator Peter Bragdon an evil genius on this one. When the goal is to try to get each district to represent about 55 or 50,000 people, the snaking can be difficult. But in this regard, him having strong roots in Amherst and living in Milford, breaking off Bedford and Merrimack became almost common sense because both towns started reaching populations of 25,000 apiece. So breaking Merrimack off I think was some common sense, and then tying it in with the other towns just made it really, really good.
All right, so let's talk about issues. What are your top issues in this campaign?
The top issues are more of my theme of my campaign is being stopping the madness. The issues I'll rank in not any particular order, but the highest business profits tax in the country, the highest in-state tuition in the country, the highest medical cost per capita in the country. We have lost our way in New Hampshire. Democrat and Republican, you can't just blame the Democrats because they've been in power the last 2 years. If you look from former Governor Sununu down to Jennifer Horn, we have had a run of 15 years of New Hampshire not being the state that I was raised and born in. I was born and raised in Manchester. I'm age 51. My first president for voting was Ronald Reagan, and I do not recognize the state that I live in anymore.
So when you say it runs from John H. Sununu all the way down through Jennifer Horn, are you referring to the chairmanship of the Republican Party and its failure to impose any kind of standards, or are you referring to his term as governor, which was quite some time ago?
His term as governor was very good. The fact that the management of the party, from Sununu to Horn, you'd have to judge him. I mean, we are not liberal progressives in the Republican Party. We do judge people. We like valedictorians. We think doctors should make more than garbage men. You know, we are capitalistic in a free market society. So, and all that being said, we go back. We need to judge people. We're comfortable.
And that means giving everybody the chance to excel, or as Limbaugh said, give everybody the chance to be the best that they can be. Exactly. And not that we want anybody to stay down. This is not about class. This is about the ability to transcend class by anybody.
That's right. And we judge athletes for being great athletes or poor athletes. We should judge politicians for being good or bad. My point is the management of the Republican Party for the last 15 years has failed. Am I right or wrong? Have we turned from a red state and a solid red state to a blue state?
We absolutely have, and it's
then
likely
someone has to be blamed for that. And so you can't blame the workers. You have to blame the management.
Yes, you do, and their management style is bankrupt, as is the party.
I would make sure that we include Fergus Collin in that list of failures.
Absolutely. Well, Fergus brought infamy and ignominy upon the party to a great extent. But, I do not understand why a party does not impose standards on its members and refuse to allow them to run as Republicans if they do not hew to those standards. We have a party platform. If you vote against the party platform more than, let's say a third of the time, that's a reasonable line, you shouldn't be allowed to call yourself a Republican. And when you're running in an election, in order to call yourself a Republican, not an independent, then you ought to be subject to vetting by the party.
I agree with what you're saying. So let me first off say that again. I agree with what you're saying. I support the party platform, point for point. However, I don't believe your premise is what has brought us to the failure part. What has brought us to failure is the lack of management instilling new membership. Whether you're a Rotarian, whether you want to join the Kiwanis Club, whether you want to join Democrats, Republicans, you want to join the Liberty Alliance, whatever group you want to belong to, you need to recruit members. And what the management of the GOP in New Hampshire has done over a decade is not recruit new members. This is why we're losing elections. We're losing elections because we're not getting enough Republicans to come out and vote Republicans.
And that's absolutely correct. And their get out the vote software and their lists have been abysmal the few years I've been trying to help in this state. And compare and contrast that with what the Democrats did under Obama, and even compare and contrast with what some of the independent Republican efforts have been. We've talked to Andrew Hemingway. We were talking to Aaron Day earlier. They can't coordinate right now because one's a PAC. But the work they are doing with Get Out the Vote software and recruitment software, this is the stuff the party should have been doing instead of wasting money on a consultant and a new website that didn't really buy them anything.
Absolutely. Yes.
So, Dan, give us some of your background. You were a town selectman.
I've been a town councilor in Merrimack for the last 5 years. I've won 2 elections in town, won very well. I beat Peter Bragdon 2 years ago by 59%. I felt like that was one of the reasons why, once he decided not to run again, I was going to put my hat in the ring. I've been I am a small business owner, own a small limousine company. I also own property, commercial property, and run property management and landlord, things like that. I have been a sales and marketing executive for 14 years on a company in Nashville called Shrink Packaging Systems. Married, 3 children, 27 years yesterday. Born and raised in Manchester.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. It's been a wild ride. I think I'm well rounded is what the best when people say, well, what do I bring to the table? I bring a life experience is what I think is my best asset.
Yeah, well rounded like a pebble going down the stream. You said a wild ride, that sounds like a great set of experiences actually, Dan. So how about a little bit on policy positions? What are you for or against? And what would you absolutely stand firm on?
Stand firm since the day I was 18 years old and was a political science major from St. Anselm's College. So in the class of '86, there will never be a sales or income tax as far as I have a living breath and a vote to make it count. If New Hampshire can't turn around this state of affairs that we have, that certainly would not be the way to go. I know a lot of other people feel like maybe we're the albatross in the union and we need to go do what everybody else is doing. But that for me is always a bedrock of our financial future, not having a sales or income tax. After that, I got asked this during our GOP event on Monday about what would you do to bring in small business, and it's not what I would do in a general sense. It is what I would do in the big sense, and I relate it to the insurance industry. We hear a lot of complaints about Gene Shaheen's legislation that drove out 20-something companies, insurance companies, and coming down to we need to write legislation that brings 20 back. So if tackle what went wrong and admit what went wrong and rewrite new policies and new regulations or less regulations, if you don't make it easier for companies to do business here, then why do they come? And along the same route, I'd say another policy question been asked about is right to work. Let me say I am for the right to work legislation, but I also ended on a bit of a downer. I can say sarcastically, but so what? What do I mean by that? You can't have the House be so split and have right to work passed by 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 votes, because no major corporation is going to cross the border and come in here based on our pendulum policies of a blue, purple, red state. The House passes right to work. Let's say that happens, and it passes by 5 votes. You just can't envision a big company coming in knowing that 24 months later the House changes hands and they repeal it. So things like that, it's common sense that we have to drive policy.
So we have to recruit people from the grassroots, recruit youngsters, and sell them on why conservatism is a good idea and grow the party. And
that's what's been lacking for 10 years, sir. Absolutely.
So in that case, obviously you espouse the right policies. And let me just ask you, so I think it was Meldrum Thompson had the saying, but, guaranteeing low taxes only works if?
Finish it.
Finish it.
I heard. I went off. Say that again.
Guaranteeing low taxes can only be done if.
Oh, if you have low spending.
Boom. Yes. Exactly. You'll recall the time when Havenstein was on camera and said that the pledge to not raise taxes was fluff. The real point was the policies that allowed you not to raise taxes, which was his clumsy way of saying what Thompson said.
That's right. And spending, roughly $2 billion for 1.3 million people. Come on, folks. We can do a better job than what we've been doing. I've used this phrase many times. We and should be considered a country club state. 1.3 million people should be easy to run. If we need to steal the Texas playbook from Governor Perry, then that's what you do. I use a sports metaphor. What happened after Joe Montana and Coach Welsh and the West Coast offense? Around the league, everybody started copying it. What have people been doing for the last 10 years with Belichick and the Patriots? They now draft smart football players. They may draft a lineman and turn him into a linebacker.
All right, Dan, we got to cut our segment short. Can you give us some contact information real quick?
Oh, sure. Dan-Dwyer for State Senate on Facebook. A lot of information there if you want to know more about me and my candidacy and what I'm about. Talking to Madness in Concord.
All right. Thank you very much, sir, for spending some time with us, and good luck.
Good luck.
Thanks
right,
guys.
We'll see you, Dan. All right. That's the end of the segment. Next segment is Maureen Mooney, who is also running for State Senate. And we're going to give her a call, and we'll have her on the line, hopefully, at the top of the segment. My name's Steve McDonald. I'm here with Mike Rogers. Skip had to skip out, but hopefully he'll be back next week. If not, we'll be here with Mike, and we'll be having a good time. So you guys stay tuned, and we will be right back.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen, Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
She tried to make us believe she was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Nancy Stiles has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, she claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. She voted to raise your gas tax by another 23%, taking a bigger bite out of our wallets every time we're at the pump. And oh, how she drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now the Senate wants to pass a bill to prevent us from criticizing Senator Stiles' vote. Call Senator Stiles at 603-918-0553 and tell her that we're on to her wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell her to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
This is the Coalition of New Hampshire Taxpayers. We're located at 8 North Main in Concord, New Hampshire. This is the repository for all things conservative and municipal. So if you have a problem in your town, your school, your budget committee, the right to know law, and now at the top of our list is voter fraud. You have a tip for us, some information for us, you want to join or help us out, cnht.org.
Welcome back to Grok Talk segment 4. Thanks again to Aaron Day and Dan Dwyer, both were in studio. And thanks for Skip, who came in and helped us get all set up so that we could have a show this week, and then he had to run. We'd like to remind you that you can check out GraniteGrok.com on Facebook and Twitter. Just search Granite Grok. And, of course, at GraniteGrok.com, where we do most of our heavy lifting.
And you can revisit this program anytime on all sorts of podcast outlets.
Oh, yeah, I can't even remember the list. It's been so long since I had to read it.
iTunes, Spreaker, iHeartRadio,
Stitcher, YouTube, Ustream.
Yeah.
We're everywhere. And we're live streaming right now, and we'd be happy to bring in our next guest, who is another candidate for the New Hampshire State Senate. I would like to welcome to the program Maureen Mooney. Maureen, good morning.
Good morning, Steve, and good morning, Mike. Thank you so much for having me on the phone this morning. And my apologies in advance that I'm not there in person in the studio. As you know, I was planning to do that 2 weeks ago or so when you first invited me, and there was a scheduling conflict. So now with campaign being in full-blown crunch mode, here I am on the phone. So my apologies in that regard.
Well, that's okay. Our apologies for running down to Home on the Range with Hemingway.
Yeah, that's true, because you were supposed to be on that week, and they took the whole show on the road, and I didn't even know we were doing that, and I'd already booked you. So, but you're here now, so
and
let's.
I heard that was a great event, and I'm sorry I missed that, the Hemingway event there.
It was indeed a lot of fun, decent turnout. Andrew gave one of his great little speeches. There's pictures of Andrew and a whole bunch of other people blasting up the dirt banks with the machine guns, just like they were Democrats. I'm sorry.
Exactly. You know, I want to thank you both, too. I haven't been on your show. I think it's been a while since I was on your show. Skip interviewed me once during the McCain campaign. So it's been a while.
That was a long time ago, yeah.
But, you know, you folks do a great job, specifically in keeping really, really important issues at the forefront of the public. And I'm talking about illegal immigration, voter fraud, EBT fraud, list goes on, and you guys really keep it at the forefront. So I want to thank you for doing that, because the more we can get the word out there, the more we can inform the public just how common sense is a lot of times not the favorite of the legislature.
Yeah, that's
true. The more we can get that out there, the more we can realize that the public can realize that things certainly need to be done and need to be corrected immediately.
Well, talking about common sense, you are running for the New Hampshire State Senate, and so obviously there's some things that have been going on that you don't view as common sense.
Yes, that's true. I am a candidate for the state Senate, and I'm in the biggest primary in the state for the state Senate.
It's crowded, yeah.
With 4 people, yes, 4 towns and 4 people. 3 candidates from Merrimack. We've got 1 candidate from Milford. And then on the other side of the ballot, the Democrats don't have a primary, but they do have a candidate, and he's from Milford.
Okay, so.
And what are your winning positions, Maureen? Why should you be the person that the voters go for? Because I understand there are some decent Republicans running in that primary, so it's not about all about rhinos versus conservatives. It's in fact a smorgasbord of choice.
Yes. Well, there are a few reasons why I'm a candidate. First of all, this district, historically Republican, needs a good conservative voice in the Senate. And we've seen throughout the state that some people who call themselves Republican were not voting for or pushing for Republican pieces of legislation. So that's the first reason. This district needs a conservative voice. The second is that I was encouraged to run. When Peter Bragdon decided he was not going to seek another term and announced his withdrawal, or that he was going to step aside from the seat and resign, my phone lines lit up. I got calls from people all over the district, folks that are friends of mine, folks that I worked with in the New Hampshire House, folks that are currently in the New Hampshire House now, and they encouraged me to run based on their familiarity with my work ethic and the projects that we had worked on in the past. So that was a big motivating factor. Another is my experience. I've done 3 terms in the New Hampshire House representing Merrimack, and at one time I represented both Merrimack and Litchfield. And, you know, representing both a large town and a small town as the same state representative is challenging, because there was a lot of apprehension at the time, you know, whether or not Litchfield was going to be properly represented and so forth. But I made it a point to literally herd up our state representatives and go to Litchfield, go to their Board of Selectmen meetings, you know, talk to their school board, make ourselves seen, make ourselves known, open ourselves to questions. It earned me the nickname the Shepherdess.
That's important, too, because for people who aren't familiar, when that situation arose, Litchfield is a tiny town compared to Merrimack, and all the reps from Merrimack were going to get elected, and so Litchfield wouldn't technically have had anybody from their town in office, and they were really concerned about that.
Exactly. And, you know, Wilton is the smallest town in the district, 4,000 people. Next to that is Amherst with 11,000 or so, you know, thereabouts. Milford with about 15,000. Then you have Merrimack with 26,000. So I'm very big on letting voters know that, you know, I represent the district, not just my hometown where I've lived now for over 20 years. In addition to all those reasons of why I decided to run, there's another reason. When Peter Bragdon announced he wasn't going to run, and I was encouraged and so forth, I took a month talking with people I know in the district, people I don't know in the district. Steve, you must know King Cone.
Yep.
I was there just talking with people in their ice creams about their thoughts on the state Senate seat. What would they think about my candidacy? Was I well known enough and so forth? And was I conservative enough? Did they think I did a good job as a state rep? And after over a month's worth of a discussion tour, I made the decision to run.
And that's a great place to hang out, too. I've seen the crowds there.
It is. Just watch out for their supersized ice cream.
The large ice cream is about a foot tall. That's not the cone. That's the ice cream part. And if you order one on a hot day, forget it.
You better be quick.
Yeah, you got to be quick. Yes, I mean, when they sell ice creams almost the same size as me.
Yeah, they're huge. All right, so let's get some input. We've passed this Medicaid expansion thing. And it's theoretically supposed to sunset in a couple of years. I've been arguing that we need to change our culture as far as insurance goes, as far as the way we invite business into the state to really save us from that expansion so that we can get away from it. What are your thoughts about that should you be elected?
Yes, well, I am not for expanding Medicaid. And on my website, my issues page is very thorough in that one section of it, I have bills that this current legislature, this legislature that just ended, took up, and how I would have voted on those bills were I a legislator at the time. And that's one of them. In fact, that's the first one on my list. I would not have voted to expand Medicaid. This sends us down a very dangerous path in terms of dependency on the government, in terms of who is going to pay for this, in terms of what happens when the federal government pulls their end of the deal. I mean, this is a crash course to what some will propose in the legislature, the answer being an income or a sales tax. Who funds this down the line when it doesn't happen? And that's the taxpayers. So I am adamantly against expanding Medicaid. And, you know, I even have a voting record on this, even though I wasn't in the legislature at the time this passed. And that's because our Merrimack Republican Town Committee had a resolution urging senators not to promote, vote, or co-sponsor this piece of legislation. And I voted for that resolution in my own town committee. We weren't the only town committee that did that. Several in the area did, but I was certainly very big on it, and we voted it, we passed it, and we sent that message up to our Republicans representing us, supposedly, in the Senate and the House.
How do you feel?
I mean, that just sums it up, doesn't it? I mean, what kind of Republican do you have when you're proposing legislation that's supported by all the Democrats and only half the Republicans in the Senate?
You know, I don't get that, Mike. It's funny how that works. You know, with 6 years of legislative experience under my belt, on the Judiciary Committee, which is a very busy committee, it can often be very contentious. We get all the hot issues. One of my colleagues used to joke that was the only committee where a state trooper was regularly stationed outside the door. But you know, but my point is, on that committee, when we would vote to recommend bills, the Democrats voted always the same. Always the same. All together, no differentiation, all the same. Republicans, we were fractured. And there were times that this was happening where the Democrats had the majority. I'm thinking to myself, does our little micro caucus in this Judiciary Committee really need to help the Democratic majority right now with 1 or 2 votes? I can't understand that.
No, unless you just want to be seen as being nice to go along or being bipartisan because it doesn't matter. I mean, it's a bit like some of the votes in the National Senate where they hold the cloture vote and then they hold the real vote and they allow you to vote for it before you vote against it or vice versa, so you can say you voted the right way and have absolutely no effect.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, if the Republicans were as lockstep in their principles and supporting the platform, which of course you may know I have a big history of because I, along with Ovid Lamontagne, chaired and co-chaired the Platform Committee some years ago. But what we did, our work in that committee essentially formulated the platform that we have today. And it's very encouraging to hear so many candidates, including those in my own race, refer to the platform because obviously our work and the work of my committee when I chaired the Platform Committee at the time is still being carried through and was done very well.
And that's excellent. Was that the same Platform Committee that Jim Rubens was on, or was his prior go-round?
His was prior. And we essentially, took the current platform at the time, and, I don't know if you saw it, but it was just one big, long document. It was ongoing. It was more of a rambling statement than it was a nicely categorized by issues of the day and position points inserted under those issues of the day. And so that's what we did. We made it almost like a working document, almost like a guideline of principles that a legislator could literally take with them to Concord and figure, oh, here comes this one. Here's where the party stands on it. Let me vote this way or that way. So we did an incredible amount of reorganizing the work that had been previously performed.
Maureen, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, I'm going to ask you what your thoughts are on how we improve the insurance situation in New Hampshire. I'm Steve McDonald with Mike Rogers. We'll be right back after this.
New Hampshire is famous for scenic drives, but they're tough to enjoy when you're on your way to the doctor. Because Obamacare limits your choices, some will have to drive more than an hour to see a doctor. What's health insurance worth if care isn't there when you need it? Jean Shaheen voted for Obamacare, putting your doctors and hospitals further out of reach. Tell Senator Shaheen Obamacare is not working for New Hampshire.
He tried to make us believe he was a fiscal conservative, but State Senator Jeb Bradley has been deceiving New Hampshire taxpayers. Like a wolf in sheep's clothing, he claimed to be one of us, pretending to blend in, but all along voting like a liberal Democrat. And oh, how he drooled at the opportunity to vote to expand Obamacare, which will result in higher taxes and longer wait times in the emergency room. And now, Senator Bradley is leading the charge to try and pass a Senate bill to prevent us from criticizing his vote. Call Senator Bradley at 603-569-4208 and tell him that we're on to his wolf in sheep's clothing routine. Tell him to stop pretending to be a fiscal conservative and start voting like one. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
right, we are back with Maureen Mooney, candidate for New Hampshire Senate District 11. And my question before the break, excuse me, was the insurance situation, which of course Jean Shaheen started down the wrong path many, many years ago when she cut us back to just a couple of
came along,
and then Obamacare came along and she cut us some more, and now we've got Medicaid expansion. And my premise has always been a lot along the lines of the O'Brien plan, which was that if people don't need to be on these programs, we don't have to fund them. So if we opened up our insurance market, we would invite all these insurers here, and then they could compete for buffet plans, and we wouldn't have to worry about all this Obamacare garbage. Maureen, do you think we have a shot at something like that around here?
I do. There's a few things with regards to insurance. First of all, you're absolutely right. We need to attract more insurers to our state. We need to be able to sell and buy insurance across state lines, no question about it. Medicaid, Obama expansion has just been detrimental. I myself am a victim. I worked for a very small entity prior to running for the state Senate, and I had an individual plan, and I was notified, oh yes, that plan, which I was pretty satisfied with, would not be available any longer after December of this year. So these things are happening. But you asked specifically, can we change it? And that leads me to, I have a 5-point criteria test that I put on my website and I talk about on the campaign trail in all the towns I'm campaigning in. And it's what I'm going to put up against these questions I'm going to put up against every piece of legislation that comes before me in the state Senate. And the first is, what does the bill cost? The second is, does the bill raise any taxes or fees? The third one is, and they're all my favorite, but this one I'm really partial to, and it's what you mentioned with regards to Jean Shaheen, and that is, what's the long-term effect of this bill? Where's this bill going to get us down the line? I'm not into quick fixes as a legislator or as a candidate. I'm into the long term and looking out for the taxpayer. The fourth point in my 5-point test is, does this bill infringe on any individual rights and liberties? And then the fifth point of my test, does the bill expand government? That's the criteria. I'm going to put every bill that comes before me next to those 5 questions. But going back to the one I'm kind of partial to, number 3 there, what's the long-term effect? If Jean Shaheen and folks like that didn't set us up for an insurance disaster down the line, you and I, Steve, wouldn't even be having this conversation. But unfortunately, most legislators don't think like that. So on my desk in District 11, should I be fortunate enough to earn the votes of the voters in this district, I'm going to put next to me the card of those 5 points and hopefully influence some legislators in that state Senate with regards to how they should be analyzing legislation.
We have a history, probably a record somewhere that Skip has kept, of all the House reps or anybody who has said something to the effect of, "Oh, I don't really pay any attention to the Constitution, the state Constitution, when I decide how to vote." I'm like, what?
Yeah, isn't that Skip's growing piece on the role of government and your relationship to it, where he keeps putting these egregious quotes?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
What's even, it's just as bad as what you said with regards to ignoring the Constitution is ignoring the platform.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you read the platform and sometimes you think, my word, what a world this would be if line by line everything went through the legislature. What a different state this would be. But some can't come to terms with that.
Well, that actually leads to 2 questions. So first of all, I noticed that there's been questionnaires put out for suggestions to change to the party platform. There's not really a lot coming out that says what they've got in mind. Are you party to any of those discussions? Do you know what they're trying to change?
No, I haven't been. I myself have not proposed an amendment, so I don't know what the status is, and I know they're having a hearing coming up relatively soon. Or they did have it, I guess, on the 27th, and I did not attend that, but I don't know what's going on. However, I know this, that the party will put these amendments, or they're supposed to, on the website, nhgop.org, for delegates to consider.
Well, we best look into that. And the other piece relative to party platform is I have long maintained that close adherence to the platform should be a condition of party membership and support for candidates and for legislators. In Britain, we have the concept of withdrawing the whip, which basically means the party no longer considers you a member, and you're on your own, bud.
Yeah, well, what a different party this would be if that were implemented here.
Yes.
It's like that would be a day and night scenario in a lot of ways. But a big part of it, too, that's one way of going about it, but another part is recruiting candidates that are in agreement with the party platform and agree with various things that should be passed and haven't been yet, or should be repealed and so forth.
What are some of the other hot issues that you would address?
Voter fraud.
Good choice.
Is a huge problem. And another reason why I complimented you folks on keeping this at the forefront, I was talking with a couple, very nice couple, and they support me and so forth. They're here in Merrimack. And they were entirely unaware of the problems with regards to voter fraud in New Hampshire. It was really an eye-opener for them to hear me tell them about the problem, and it was an eye-opener for me to think that they didn't know there was a problem. So this is something that certainly needs to be addressed, and the thing that really bothers me is that with people who commit voter fraud, you know, they've done the crime, and then they're out scot-free. It's already committed.
It's a domicile question. Yeah, we definitely need to do something about domicile in New Hampshire. Lots of other states have very specific rules that would make it illegal for these people to vote here in their state, and yet this is completely ignored. They've just opened it up, and that anybody can walk in, vote on Election Day, and leave. And I don't know why people do not understand that this abrogates state sovereignty. It vacates local sovereignty. Local towns, counties have no control over who decides who gets elected to make decisions about money, and I just don't understand why people don't grasp that.
I mean, just look at the buses going out from UNH during the last major election. In 2008, they flooded a couple of districts to try and tilt the overall vote for Obama. In 2012, they were much more focused. They bussed them out to the towns where they could make the most difference, where they could tip the balance.
Precisely. It's a huge problem, and same-day voter registration is not doing us any favors. Not doing anybody. When I say anybody, I mean all of us citizens, Democrats, Republicans alike. We want our elections to be as clean as possible. And with the same-day voter registration, you know, I've been a first-hand witness to this. I've been a poll checker and an inspector at some of these polls on election days. I can't believe what I see. This past election, 2012 presidential, I was in Nashua, a relatively urban polling location. I was there along with 6 Democrat attorneys at the same polling location in a ward in Nashua. I mean, 6 attorneys, that's a mid-sized law firm. What's going on? And then, you know, about 4 o'clock or so, all these attorneys kick into helpers, and now they're helping last-minute show-ups register to vote. So what's this transition from, you know, just simply observing to be sure that polls are being run properly to conversion into assistant moderators? I mean, there's so much work to be done, and you're right, the definition between residency, domicile has to be clarified. And there's, you know, if we get the right people in this legislature, that can happen. You know, we worked on eminent domain a lot when I was in the legislature, and we worked on specifying definitions to make it as Loctite as we could with regards to private property and blight and so on and so forth. And we can do the same thing with voter laws as well.
And we need to.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And we had, of course, the the eminent domain stuff. And as far as I know, David Souter still has his house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He does.
Well, that leads me to another. I could talk to you folks all day, but that leads me to another story. You know, I chaired the special committee on eminent domain when I was in the House. And it was a committee consisting of both senators and representatives, and we even worked on the language for a constitutional amendment that the voters passed in 2006. It's in our Constitution right now. And so as a result of that, I was invited to speak at a conference, all expenses paid for. It was no state expense or anything like that, down in Virginia to talk on eminent domain. And being from New Hampshire, I was like the star of the conference because they all wanted to know, well, what are you going to do to Judge Souter's home? What do you think of Judge Souter? You know, have you heard from him? And where's the status on that? So it was relatively funny.
That's and we came so close to seizing that property.
Well, if we just designated a historic site so he couldn't do anything to it, it would be perfect payback. We wouldn't steal it. We would just steal his rights.
That's right. Oh, my goodness.
All right,
so much work to be done. That's
we have
for
about
sure.
2.5 minutes.
All right. Well,
how would you like to fill them?
Well, I would like to direct your listeners to my website, votemooney.com. Very comprehensive website. My issues page is, in my own opinion, second to none. I have it in 5 sections. Not only do I talk about my general overview, my philosophy on government, which is limited government, less spending, and certainly enhancing individual rights and liberties, but I also talk about my 5-way test that I explained on your show. I take the headers from the current party platform and give my thoughts on each of those broad headings. In addition, I talk about constituent service and the importance of that. I fully realize that my job as a senator doesn't begin and end in Concord. It's also in the 4 towns here of Merrimack, Amherst, Milford, and Wilton. And in the last part of my issues page, I talk about specific bills that I mentioned, bills that this past legislature took up, and how I would have voted were I a state senator in the legislature this time around. So if your voters have a minute or two, it's very important because election is coming up very quickly. It's votemooney.com.
And how do you feel about your position relative to your hopefully Democrat opponent?
Oh, I feel relatively good on that because this district has been historically Republican, so that's always important. In addition to that, I've been to one end of this district to the other, campaigning like crazy in this primary, and believe it or not, I've not seen one sign of or hint of this Democrat opponent. So he's not working very hard right now, which I believe is critical whether you have a primary or not, if your name is on the general election. So I don't see him out there working very hard. And in addition to that, I do believe that my views, my values, my principles, my record, much more coincide with the voters of this district than his do.
What was his name?
Roger Tilton.
Okay, because I don't know that I knew that. I mean, last time I heard they weren't running anybody, but I'm sure they could put somebody. All right.
Hopefully not related to Brian Tilton. That would make Brian very sad, I'm sure, if it was a Democrat.
Well, Maureen, thank you so much for taking time to talk to us. It's great to have you on.
Thank you. I really appreciate the invitation, and I look for the best on September 9th, the primary, and hope to talk to both of you again.
All right. Good luck.
We hope to be having the reason to talk to you right after the primary, because that'll be a good thing.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. You have a good weekend.
Thank you.
Too.
All righty. Thank you. That was Maureen Mooney running for New Hampshire State Senate in District 11. And before that, we had Dan-Dwyer, also a candidate in the same district. And before that, we had Aaron Day, who is with Stark 360 and the chairman of the RLCNH. A lot of good discussion. Mike and I filled 15 minutes. All in all, pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think we did too badly. Just trying to adjust a little bit to being in a different position here, watching the live stream, and thankfully there were no glitches. It looks like it's gone end to end without a hitch.
All right, well, Skip's going to send us some instructions so we can set this up in his absence, and hopefully he will be here, but if not, we will be back with more discussion, more conversation, and more politics, and more news, and more opinion, and more Grok Talk.
And in fact, and for next week, we got several guests.
We do, and I wrote them down and told you who they were, and I gave you the piece of paper they were on, and now I have no idea where they went. Oh, we got to go. Bye.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah, baby!
When asked whether she still supports Obamacare, Senator Jeanne Shaheen said,
"Yes, I do continue to support the law. We're beginning to see some positive results."
How can Senator Shaheen say we're seeing positive results when 22,000 of our neighbors have already lost their health insurance? What's worse, the Boston Globe reports the state's only health insurance provider radically reduced the number of hospitals in their network, forcing some people to drive over an hour for lab work, even when there's a hospital within a few miles of their home. When pressed about lack of access, Shaheen said,
"There are some hospitals that are not covered, unfortunately, and I certainly hope that's going to change."
Jeanne Shaheen promised us we could keep our doctors and our healthcare coverage. Now she hopes we can get to a local hospital? Call Senator Shaheen at 603-647-7500. Tell her we need more than hope. We need leadership. Paid for by Citizens for a Strong New Hampshire.
Senator Jeanne Shaheen said, if you like your current health plan, you can keep it. That's not true, Senator. 22,000 New Hampshire citizens have been kicked off their insurance plans. Hospitals in Rochester, Concord, and Portsmouth, they aren't allowed to provide care under the exchange. Senator, you were wrong in your comments. You should apologize for your misleading remarks. I'm calling Senator Shaheen at 750-3004 and telling her I want my doctor back. You should too.
Paid for by saberpack.org, not authorized by any candidate or candidate committee.
All of the music on this program comes to us through Creative Commons licensing from Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speakers, not necessarily those of CNHT, GraniteRock.com, or anyone else for that matter.
Rock Talk.